So I had a friend, and he had a YouTube channel, Charlie Mike. It's continue mission, fuck the world. It says that across the back of my van. It's cmftw. cmftw knives was his thing he did. You can go find him, Matt Freeman. I suggest that you watch him. At least a little bit. You'll get some of why I do half of what I do. And I want to talk to you about one of the things that Matt Freeman taught the world. At least taught everyone in his circle. And that is, you don't pay for hype. Titling this video, Never Pay for Hype. What do I mean by that? This is a Holosun 403R. This red dot is right now $140 on eBay. It is legitimately the best combat optic on the planet for the money. You could maybe quibble about some of the other Holosun clones that are close to near perfect clones of aim points. I like this one for now. I don't own an Aimpoint T2 because I don't pay for hype. I used to have an Aimpoint T1 because I got it for free with an LWRC. I bought a new LWRC off the line, and the promotion they had going was buy an LWRC rifle, get an Aimpoint T1. And the reason they were doing that is because basically Aimpoint had just come out with the T2s. T1s were old news, and the Saudi Arabians had bought LWRC M6 A1 IC carbines with T1 micros. So LWRC bought a fuck ton of these things and had them like left over, and they were just making a shit ton of this particular thing, and they were willing to give you a free aim point if you would help them make their contract bigger so that they could make this shit, I think was the point of it. So I helped fund Saudi Arabia's arms program to get a free aim point. Aimpoint was a good optic, but I had an Aimpoint T1, and this is as good as an Aimpoint T1 was. Even in night vision and shit. I had Holosun side by side with that Aimpoint T1 and under night vision, and yeah. The Holosun, especially the earlier ones, were not quite as good. This thing, I guarantee you, would hold up quite better. At least, it's not going to be Aimpoint under night vision. But how many of you are really running night vision? And if I were running night vision, I would still run this thing and just get over it. More than likely. It's not that big of a deal. So, how do we apply this in all things in life? Well, I think the people that need to hear this are the gun people. My, Matt Freeman I was talking about, he was talking to the knife community, never pay for hype, because basically at the end of the day, it's $5 worth of steel you're buying. You should get that. And like as someone that makes their own knives, I get that. So, if I can find something cheap that works, that I know will work and be bomb-proof and whatever, and like it passes my own either rigorous testing or someone I know on the internet that I trust vouches for it, basically. Like my SPR mount I have, I wouldn't have bought, except Nothing Fancy uses them all the time. It's a cheap-ass Weaver mount. It's made in Taiwan, I think, and it's like all of like fucking $45 for the mount, and then another $30 for the little red dot piggyback thing I have on order. And honestly, I didn't know they made the red dot piggyback thing. I think that's a new thing they must have introduced for an old mount. It's fucking badass, though. Either that or maybe just I never noticed it, because who would be crazy enough to run around all the time with a fucking 1-inch scope and a micro aim point on their gun? Anyway, the never paying for hype thing basically just means that just because you pay a lot of money for something does not make it the best. oftentimes the best version of something is not the cheapest, but just above the cheapest version of something. So, like, if you need a knife, some of the best knives in the world are made by Mora and Buck. That's true. If you really want, hey man, I need a knife, I can go get you a Buck pocket knife for $20 and a Mora for 20, 25, maybe even as low as 15, depending on the model. And that's all the knives you'd ever need in your whole fucking life, probably. That's what Charlie Mike was talking about. You need to sort out what you actually need versus what you think you need. And you need to sort out what is something that is legitimately worth spending thousands of dollars on, like night vision, from shit that is not. Like a red dot. This is kind of like do your own thing. This is, I wish Nothing Fancy and Charlie Mike could have met. They would have been interesting. Although I think Nothing Fancy is kind of a jackass, to be honest now. Like, we had been talking or whatever, and he found out I was trans, and he basically started trying to, convince me that I had been sexually molested or some shit, and, was an alcoholic. Which, I think you could make a fair case that I might be some sort of alcoholic, but I really don't drink that much. I smoke a shit ton of weed. So, weedaholic. If anything. I still like nothing. But Charlie Mike very often pointed out that basically Nothing Fancy was a fucking moron. He can be about some things, but he legitimately has like some shit figured out in ways that most people don't. And Charlie Mike legitimately had some shit figured out in ways most people don't. These are people that, like, I wouldn't be the same had I not known Charlie Mike, and I wouldn't be the same had I not watched a shit ton of Nothing Fancy over the last 10 years. That's the thing that Blazer and I have in common, is basically when we met, we didn't know that we were both TMPers pretty hardcore, and as we got to hang out or whatever, we noticed that, yeah, we were both fucking Nothing Fancy fans. And at that point, like, I don't know. I included him into, hey, I do this shit that I do in the way that I do it because I kind of figure we're going to have to fight the government someday. Maybe. And, he was like, why are you doing it live on the internet then? I'm like, well, because I kind of figure they're going to come and shoot me in my living room eventually. Like, this was 10 years ago. And, I'd rather that there be a whole bunch of people that learn from my experience or whatever, because they're going to do that to me pretty much regardless. That's still kind of how I feel. Like, this is a place to pass down knowledge, and this is some hardcore shit that, like, some major people in my life got right. Is never pay for hype. Don't ever pay $500 for a fucking pocket knife. Like, if that's what you want to do and you think it's the best thing ever, go ahead and pay for it. Like, this is the thing you should get about Charlie Mike. Charlie Mike had a knife collection that, it came and went, but it was like my gun collection. It was all $1,000 plus knives. And Rolexes and shit like that. That's what he was into. He was 101st Airborne. He went to Iraq. He kind of got fucked up and came back. Got into drugs and making knives. And we had much in common, basically. I bought a couple of pretty expensive knives from him. And, it was money well spent. One of those is a MacV-SOG buoy thing that I designed and he made. And after he died, I sold that thing for a lot of money. I don't remember how much now. I think it was like $1,000. I paid like $300 or $250 for that thing. So that was a good shot. And that was one of those things that, like, I was making knives at the time, and I had Charlie Mike in the back of my head saying, yo, sell that shit and buy tools. I think he'd say me same thing again. Although now I don't have the tools, and I kind of wish I had the knife. So, although I don't know, I have knives that I made using his knowledge, and that means more to me. That's kind of where I was at with it. After he died, I sat in the shop and hand ground a couple of fucking Tontos that are legit some of the best shit I ever made. I couldn't feel my hand for a week. You know, just to put that out there as to how hard it is to grind a Tonto by hand, freehand. I was so fucked up about him dying that I did 2 of them back to back without even thinking about it. Anyway, this is kind of like the knife maker's philosophy, I think, towards tactical gear, is don't pay for hype. Don't pay for shit you don't need. And don't pay for Gucci gear. Get good shit. Don't buy bad shit. Like, if you look at the optics and shit I tell you to buy, they are cheap. They are not junk. There's stuff at that same price point that will fall apart on you. Optics-wise, pretty much red dots. I'm going to look at Holosun always. SIG is Holosun. Holosun is SIG. Basically, most of the SIG optics, you're buying old technology Holosun. A couple of the SIG optics are kind of interesting. I intend to get a SIG Romeo 7S next. So we'll see. But, like, scope-wise, I have a fucking Weaver and a Weaver mount. Weaver's been around for fucking forever. The Weaver mount works. The Weaver scope works. Is it the most combat-hardened thing in the world? I don't know. It hasn't failed me yet. That's one of those things. I got that from Nut and Fancy. And this is where I think Nut and Fancy would wholeheartedly agree with this fucking video. Or at least Charlie Mike's sentiments on this shit. Where, like, think about what you're doing. Think about why you're doing it. If you want the $1,000 knife, buy the $1,000 knife. But know that that's not the best knife in the world. Know that the best knife in the world can be had for probably $5. This is, you know, it's not exactly that way with AR-15s, but some of it is that way. In that you could go buy a Geisley rifle or a Knight's Armament rifle, and I'm telling you that I could build you a better rifle out of junker parts. As long as you give me a pretty decent amount of money to buy a barrel. You give me decent money to buy a barrel, bolt carrier group, and trigger. The rest of it doesn't fucking matter, really. And, you know, barrel-wise, I'm getting a ballistic advantage. Trigger-wise, I'm getting an ALG. Bolt carrier-wise, I'm going to get a Palmetto State Armory. So it's not crazy shit. Again, don't pay for hype. No one out there would be telling you that, like, a ballistic advantage barrel was the best barrel on the market, except me. Because it is. And it is because it's fucking mix of cost and new technology and everything else. Like, I don't know. There's some people in, like, the 3-gun world or, like, the SPR shooting realm that might tell you to go buy their Hansen barrel or whatever that I was looking at. But they wouldn't tell you just to buy their barrels on everything you fucking get. Like, if the only reason I wouldn't do them is because I want a lightweight barrel, then I'd go Faxon. And that's what I intend to use on Loki. You can go spend crazy money on a lightweight barrel. That's some proof research stainless carbon fiber mixture thing that wears out in like 100 rounds or some shit. Like, and this is some of the stuff that, like, why do you not like X? It's because it doesn't have endurance. I don't really care for suppressors that much because they put wear on my guns. Okay, they get hot. They keep my guns hot. Like, I'm going to be shooting in long strings of fire. Not a fan. I'm just not. This is, I want to do a whole separate video on suppression, but I really think that's kind of overrated too. I'm not sure it's hype, but it's not this magical technology that hides you from the enemy. It's one of those things that an appropriately set up lightweight suppressed gun in a squad could do a lot of good. But like, some of it is your squad, when it makes contact, is going to make a shit ton of fucking noise. And if you know what the enemy is, and I would rather not have the handicap of suppressors once you go loud. And I'm not the only one that would tell you that. Like, I guarantee you could fucking go talk to fucking special forces dudes and they'd tell you the same thing. That as soon as things aren't sneaky no more, you lose the cans. And this is why they don't run comps underneath their fucking surefires. They run those surefire war comps or flash hiders or whatever, just like I was doing a few years ago. Like, the reason I stopped doing that was because in reality, it's spending money you don't need to spend if you never intend to mount a suppressor. Like, I was doing it to put a blast warden on, and that is kind of cool, but it's not really worth it. This is where I keep coming to on the idea of a muzzle device for Moon Tigers. Like, I could put some sound mitigation thing from Whip Machine on the front of this thing, and I think it might actually be semi-effective at some of the stuff I'd wanted to do. However, it costs money and it weighs, and this thing doesn't. The A2 birdcage is kind of perfection. There's going to be a day someday where people are fighting over real deal USGI A2 bird cages. If it's not already there. It's my favorite muzzle device. I've had, 3 prongs. I've had A1s. I've had A2s. I think in a civilian urban self-defense perspective, the A1 actually makes more sense. In an overall all-arounder carbine, being out in the woods and shooting prone, A2 makes sense. So since we're only going to have one or two guns, we're going to set up all our guns to shoot in the woods, basically. So that's why A2s. I think the A2 birdcage is a perfect example of not paying for hype. And, that's In-Range TV started saying that a couple of years ago. And, if you're not going to run a suppressor or some shit, I wouldn't worry about anything other than A2. I think some of their videos really hurt the flash hider industry. I guess. Anyway, this has been 20 minutes of this, and I think you guys get the point. Don't judge your gear by how much it costs. Judge it by what it does and whether it's good at it. See you guys later.